The Conditions browser is used to access tide level and tidal current predictions, as well as weather forecasts, observations, and other similar information. The primary page of the Conditions browser, seen here, is an overview that consolidates a lot of commonly used information. Additional pages are listed at the top of the browser, and some of the panels in the overview link to other pages as well. Like all browsers, you can grab the vertical divider to adjust the width of the browser window. The overview page provides a summary of important information at a glance. It includes the date, time zone in use, sun and moon rise and set times, local magnetic variation, nearby tide and current predictions, weather observations, and if we scroll down, a text forecast, a local forecast, and weather radar. The actual information shown will depend on the location displayed on the chart panel and also whether or not you have internet access. I'll scroll back up. The tide and current prediction panels provide a summary of nearby station information. Hover over a panel to see its location on the chart. Click on a panel and you'll switch to a page showing more station information and an interactive graph of predictions you can use to see predictions for other times. I'll use the back button. Some of the other panels will also lead to more detailed information when clicked. The graphical forecast page is used to download and display weather forecast information as an extra layer on the chart. I'll use the back button to go back to the primary page. Messages is used to display nav text or safety net messages if you have an appropriate receiver connected to your PC. I'll use back. And surveys lets you load and manage hydrographic surveys in XYZ format, which can be obtained from some U.S. Army Corps of Engineer districts. I'll click the back button. Rose Point ECS can predict the tide levels and currents set and drift for thousands of tide and current stations in the U.S. and some other parts of the world. These predictions can be displayed as graphs over time in the browser, or, for a particular instant, directly on the chart. All tide prediction times are adjusted for the local time currently selected for your computer. To change your computer's time zone or daylight savings options, use the date and time option in the Windows control panel. Tide and current stations appear on the chart at the location provided by NOAA. I'll pan over and zoom in a little here to see tide stations and current prediction arrows. The Highlight Objects button, found in the Chart menu, Highlight Objects, makes tide and current stations easier to see against the chart. Also, hiding all charts makes it easier to see. I'll leave vector charts turned on for now. I'll go back and I'll unselect Highlight Objects. Also, when the browser is closed, the tide and current icons disappear. To enable them, even with the browser closed, go to the Chart menu, More Options, and select Tide Stations and/or Current Stations. Close that, and now the tide and current stations are displayed. The letter C for current and T for tide are shortcut keys that do the same thing. They're turned on right now, so typing the letter T will cause the tide diamonds to disappear. Typing it again will turn them back on, as does the letter C. Current arrows are displayed right now, so typing the letter C turns them off. Typing the letter C again turns them on. I'll go back to the browser window. Here we see a tide prediction for the Columbia River entrance, North Jetty. Notice I hover over it, I see its name. If I zoom in a little bit, I can see that it's at 3.73 feet right now, and the arrow is pointing up, meaning it's a rising tide. Click on the tide station symbol to see its name, a prediction for the current time and the trend, and a one-day tide graph. Click anywhere in the graph where it says Show in Browser to see more details about the station, including an interactive graph of predicted levels in the browser panel. We can resize this window by grabbing the splitter and dragging it over. You see its name, high and low information for today, as well as the interactive graph. Rose Point ECS lets you see tide and current predictions, as well as river stages and weather forecasts, for times other than right now, using a concept called virtual time. Normally, virtual time is the same as real time. However, if you use any of the time-changing functions we're about to describe, the virtual time is set to the time you've selected and it's paused so it doesn't advance as real time does. The time-changing functions are in the browser toolbar for tide, current, river stages, and graphical weather. The buttons at the top of the panel let you move forward an hour, backwards an hour, forwards a day, backwards a day, a calendar to pick a specific date, or return to now if you're in virtual time. When virtual time is in effect, the browser will indicate that date and time. I'll go forward 1 hour. Notice what happens to the bar on the graph. It's green right now. When I go forward 1 hour, it turns red. Also notice the clock in the instrument panel has a pulsing yellow warning bar above it. And the clock is indicating virtual time. It's indicating an hour forward. If I click the Now button to go to current time, the pulsing yellow bar goes away, the indicator line reverts to green, and Rosepoint ECS is now displaying real time. Rosepoint ECS will also resume real time if the browser is closed. The graph itself, we can click and drag to see different dates and times. That's clicking and dragging with the left mouse button. You can zoom out to see more days, zoom in to see more detail on a particular day. Go forward a day, go forward an hour, hold it down to animate it. Notice how it jumps forward. I can click the date button to see what it's going to look like next weekend. Jump forward, now we're seeing a week from now. And I can click anywhere in the graph to set that particular virtual time. To print, click the menu and select Print. A 4-day prediction for the selected station appears. After printing, use Cancel to return to the previous page. We can resume real time by clicking the Now button. Click the back arrow, which in effect closes the Tide browser by returning to the overview page, or click the Close button to close the browser. I'll click back. If your PC is connected to the internet, Rosepoint ECS can download observations from the National Data Buoy Center, NDBC, as well as meteorological reports, METARs, from around the world. And in some areas, environmental condition observations are broadcast by AIS, and Rosepoint ECS can use that information when an AIS receiver is connected to your PC. In this location, I'll zoom out and pan over, make the screen a little bigger. I'm looking for a buoy. There we go. NDBC and METAR observations appear as station plots on the chart when the conditions browser is open. You can show or hide these from the Show menu. As an example, here is buoy 46 Tango 29 off the mouth of the Columbia River. There's a station plot appearing around it containing conditions information. A station plot is a standard meteorological symbol that concisely displays wind speed and direction, air temperature, air pressure, and possibly other information. Click on a station plot to see more information. I'll close that, scroll back out. If I zoom way out, we also see river stages displayed as gray boxes. River stages are displayed when the conditions browser is open. You might have to zoom out or pan around to locate one. Click on it to see a pop-up containing information and a hydrograph showing how the river levels changed over time. The hydrograph shows historical data on the left and forecast data on the right, the green dotted line. The scale on the left-hand side is the river stage in feet, and some stations will show the flow rate in KCFS on the right-hand side. Click again to close that. I'll go back to the primary page. Rosepoint ECS can be used to download and view text weather forecasts and graphical forecasts or weather maps, which are overlaid on your chart. Both these features require some sort of internet access to retrieve the forecasts. The weather data comes from NOAA, and normally operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but we can't guarantee its availability. Therefore, the forecast information in Rosepoint ECS must not be relied on as your sole source of weather information. If we scroll down, the text forecasts are forecasts similar to the reports you hear on the NOAA VHF weather radio service. Depending on what's currently displayed in the chart panel, text forecasts and/or local forecasts might be displayed. An internet connection is required to download the text weather forecast, but once a forecast has been downloaded, you'll be able to read it up until its expiration date, even when you're not connected to the internet. I'll scroll back to the top, and I'll click Graphical Forecast. Graphical weather forecasts contain a geographic grid of predicted values for weather attributes such as temperature, air pressure, wind, etc. Rosepoint ECS can superimpose these values on your chart and even animate them over time so you can see how the weather might affect your plans. The general nature of the graphical weather forecasts makes them more suitable for long-range voyages rather than short trips, where the text forecasts are usually more appropriate. You can have Rosepoint ECS download data by clicking the download button, or open a GRIB file you've obtained some other way from the menu on the toolbar by clicking Open GRIB File. Click the download button to access the download weather forecast window. Select the region you'd like the forecast for. Select the type of information, air pressure, rain, wind speed and direction. Select the number of days you'd like to include in your forecast. An estimate of the download size is shown, and click OK. Your download starts and a progress indicator lets you know how much data still needs to be downloaded. You can keep using Rosepoint ECS as the download progresses. Once it's complete, these checkboxes control which layers are displayed on the chart. I'll turn off precipitation, turn it back on so you can see that. And I'll zoom back in on the area where my vessel is. If the land-based METAR stations are causing clutter, you can turn them off with the Show menu. In this case, they're not displayed. In fact, the vector chart information is making it harder to see the weather data. So I'll go to the Chart menu and select Hide All Charts. Now the graphical forecast is easy to see. I'll go forward an hour. If I hold the forward 1 hour button down, we'll see how the weather patterns change as time goes by. We're in virtual time at this point. I'll click now to go back to now. A nice feature is the ability to see a point forecast. Put the cursor over an area of the chart panel. I'll zoom in and we'll look at the entrance right there. And notice it says the wind is 6 knots from the northeast. It's forecast to be 6 knots from the northeast for the next 6 hours. If I go forward a day, because perhaps I'm going to go out tomorrow, and I put my cursor in the same place, now it says it's 2 knots in 30 hours. 2 knots out of the south, so the weather's changed. So moving the cursor around, notice what happens as I move around. I go offshore, or I go upriver, I go offshore, I'm getting a point forecast. I'll turn the charts back on with the shortcut key V for vector, and I'll click back to go back to the overview page, and that's it for the conditions browser.